All right, cool. So let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of our Clean Code webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kirti Joshi, and I lead the enterprise product marketing team at SonarSource, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's session. And I have with me Brian Cipollone from the sales engineering team, who is the presenter for today's topic. So Brian's going to be talking to you about how you can effectively scale clean code for your growing enterprise. He's going to cover some actionable items, and he's going to demo some capabilities that you can start implementing today. So before I go ahead and let Brian introduce himself, I'm going to take a brief minute to go over some housekeeping items. So this is a 30-minute session that includes a Q&A. So throughout the session, you can submit your questions via the Q&A box in Zoom, not the chat box, but the Q&A box. And on our side, we have two panelists, Jason and Silva from the services team, who will triage your questions. Some they will answer directly during the webinar, and others they will kind of queue up so that Brian can address them at the end of his presentation. Another thing to note that this session is being recorded, and so in a few days, you should receive an email with the recording. Another thing is that after the webinar, we are going to send over a survey. Please do tell us what you liked, where we can improve, and what other topics and deep dive sessions will be interesting for us to cover in future webinars. All right, so okay then, without any delay, let's get started. Brian, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Kirti, and thank you all for joining me today. I'm Brian Cipollone from the Sonar sales engineering team. One of the great things I get to do here in my role is to meet customers and help them get the most out of our tools. In today's webinar, I'd like to start by sharing a case study from a major retail that I've worked with a few years ago that was struggling a little bit to scale clean code across their organization. This particular customer had been using SonarQube for several years, and they shared with me that they were scanning 100% of their code with SonarQube, and also they had SonarQube integrated with every one of their Jenkins pipelines. But even though they were scanning all of their code, they didn't really feel like they were seeing much of an improvement in overall quality. So on the screen, you can see the results from a couple of the projects that we reviewed together. And I'd like to take a quick poll just to get everyone in the audience's opinion on, based on whether the results you're seeing here, which of these two applications do you think is best to release into production? So we're going to pop up that poll here, and we'll give you about 30 seconds to go ahead and just, give us your opinion, what you think is the best option here to release to production. And go ahead and choose which one you think is best. These are a couple of real projects that we have been scanned with SonarQube a few versions ago, but these represent the results that we were seeing with this particular customer. We have a couple more seconds here. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the results here. And not surprisingly, most of you agreed that Project B appears to be the better code, and that's the one that you would likely release into production. The truth is that this particular customer had really no idea whether or not either of these applications should be released. When we dug deeper into these projects, we found that the first Java project, Project A, had over 1,600 tests enabled. In addition to the rules that we provide with our products out of the box, this particular user had gone and found every single Java plugin that they could find out there in our community, and they installed them, and they also enabled every single rule that was available. And some of these rules were even duplicates of each other. So if there was a particular issue in their code, that would create multiple issues with SonarQube. So in this particular case, there's over 12,000 open issues, and these require tens of thousands of remediation effort. Sorry, tens of thousands of hours of remediation effort. So when I asked the team how they use these results, considering that this project had never met any sort of quality standard, their response was, well, we really don't. We gave this particular team a waiver, and they always release their project regardless of what SonarQube's saying. And the second project really looked impressive on the surface, project B, as you see here, and it looked like a really high quality application. But when we looked closely, we'd found that their project administrator had simply disabled all the SonarQube rules. They were barely testing anything. And of course, this project always passed their standards. So we took a step back and I asked this customer, what do you expect from your code? What do you feel is absolutely necessary before you reach production? What needs to be fixed? What needs to be addressed? And they stated that they wanted no critical vulnerabilities in their code and no critical bugs. They felt like all those things should be addressed before their code gets released. But when we looked at the standards that they were actually using, in addition to covering vulnerabilities and bugs, they had a bunch of other arbitrary conditions in place. They had things like less than 5 code smells or a complexity score less than 100. Most of these things had nothing to do with vulnerabilities or bugs, and they completely distracted their developers from the problems that their business felt was important. So even though this organization was scanning all their code, they were seeing very little benefit. They had no consistent standard and no way to let developers know what they should be fixing. So here's an example of the results a software team would see when they first scan their code with Sonar or really any sort of static analysis tool. These results alone usually create more questions than answers. Are these good or bad results? Where should my developers be focusing attention? How should we tackle these issues without disrupting our production schedule? This code's been running in production for years. Should we really be messing with any of this? And hey, we can accept these results for now, but how do we avoid introducing new problems in the future? Now you imagine an enterprise where you're scanning hundreds or thousands of repositories. Those questions start piling up across hundreds of developers. It creates a mess that really disrupts you from getting any sort of value from Sonar's products. So it's not just enough to run static analysis on your code. You need to set a standard that developers will respect and one that they'll know when they need to act on. So to help you create a clean code standard that scales across your enterprise, I'm going to show you 4 tools in Sonar's products that will help you adopt meaningful quality standards. The first is quality profiles. These define the rules that your source code must follow. The next is quality gates. These define the conditions that your code must meet to conform with your standards. Notifications let your developers know when they need to take remediation action. Enterprise reporting helps you monitor the quality and security of hundreds or even thousands of software projects. So I'm going to jump over into SonarQube and show you a few of these things. The first tool I want to talk about is quality profiles. Quality profiles represent the rule book that developers should be following when they're writing code. Now, we ship our products with thousands of rules that can be used to test your code. And deciding which of these rules you should be using can be a little bit overwhelming. The good news is that we've already done a lot of this work for you. For every one of our supported language, we've created a built-in Sonar Way quality profile that represents the recommendations for what rules your developers should be following to write clean code. This should be your starting point for SonarQube across your organization. And once you have some experience using SonarQube, you can decide to customize these rules. But before you start doing that, you want to make sure that you're gathering feedback from developers. You may start hearing from developers that some of the rules in that you're using are too noisy, or maybe they just don't fit in with the way your organization writes code. Take this feedback into account when you're developing these custom quality profiles. A great place to gather feedback from your developers is from within SonarQube itself. You can go into the Issues tab in SonarQube and take a look at which items developers may have marked as won't fix, and maybe even as won't false positives. This is going to give you some feedback from the tool to let you know which rules developers feel are a little too noisy, and that can create some guidance on where to go if you decide to start customizing your quality profiles. Also, after if you do decide to go ahead and customize your quality profiles, make sure you're periodically revisiting these quality profiles to make sure they are consistent with the latest releases of our products, and that you're taking advantage of all the new tests available to you. For example, when you are reviewing a quality profile, you can see here that we list all the deprecated rules and also any of our recommendations that you're not following with this quality profile, to give you some guidance of things that you may need to update. The next item I want to talk about is quality gates. So if you think of quality profiles as the rule book your developers need to follow, you can think of quality gates as the referee. It's important to make sure that your quality gates focus on the aspects of code quality and security that are important to your organization. These standards should be actionable, not aspirational. When developing your quality gates, ask yourself, what do I expect my developers to fix before merging their code or releasing it? If you don't expect developers to fix something immediately, then it really doesn't belong in your quality gate. And since you've probably been working on your code for a while before you started using SonarQube, you should focus your efforts, your conditions in your quality gates on new code, because you're really not expecting developers to fix years worth of issues before your next release. Developers may decide to go back and address some of those older issues, but they must keep their new code clean. So when developing these quality gates, a best practice is to focus on some of the key metrics that we've developed to help you compare software projects of different sizes and of different languages. You can see here in this particular project that we created some grades in each of these categories: reliability, security review, and maintainability. And these grades are calculated separately, both for new code, so recently changed code, as well as overall code. So you're still getting these ratings across your entire code base, but you should really be focusing your quality standards on these ratings on your newer code. The next tool I want to talk about is notifications. So now that you've set up your clean code standard with quality profiles and quality gates, it's important to let developers know when they're not meeting those standards. If they don't know when to act, none of these issues are really going to get resolved. The best time to notify developers that there is something they need to address is when the quality gate has failed. So when you see a quality gate failed, this is a great time to get everybody on board to go and address these problems and to bring this code back into compliance. So if you're passing the quality gate, there may be some findings, but you've already determined that they are not serious enough for you, for developers to take action. So some of the ways that you can notify developers is through SonarLint. SonarLint is our companion IDE plugin. And when that is connected to your SonarQube server, those notifications will pop up right there in the IDE. Also, developers can subscribe to email notifications. So every user in SonarQube can go in and choose when they want to be notified when something is is wrong in SonarQube when their quality gate has failed, really any conditions that they want to pay attention to. Also, with SonarQube Developer Edition, we'll go out to pull requests and decorate the results with the SonarQube scan. So here you can see in this particular GitHub pull request, SonarQube has gone out and added a comment to let whoever's doing this review know that something needs to be addressed in this project. Another way you can do this is through badges. So with each project, you have a snippet of code here where you can get a project badge. You can put this on a wall board. You can put this on your project pages, whatever developers are paying attention to. And if you really want to get your developers' attentions, you can go ahead and break your pipelines when you failed quality gates. That usually drives some action pretty quickly. The final tool I want to talk about is enterprise reporting. So you've established a clean code standard across your enterprise, and in addition to your developers, you'll likely have a lot of stakeholders that are interested in the quality and security of your code. With SonarQube Enterprise Edition, you'll have access to additional reporting that allows you to create portfolios of project that maps to your business needs. This feature rolls up project level reporting from your teams, and it maps to your business units, your technology areas, really whatever makes sense in your organization. These portfolio reports allow stakeholders to subscribe and share these reports and create additional metrics across these projects. This releasability grade here from this portfolio is a very useful indicator that reflects what percentage of your projects are meeting your quality standards. These reports also summarize clean code in the other categories in really any performance measure that SonarQube keeps track of. So in closing, I want to share with you a few things that you can do today to go out after this webinar and start scaling clean code in your organization. The first step is to go and review and consolidate your quality profiles. If you find in your SonarQube instance, or if you're using Sonar Cloud, our software as a service offering, that there's a lot of quality profiles, a lot of teams are using their own set of rules, it may be a good idea to go ahead and start consolidating those. You can, if you feel that that's too much work, you can go ahead and start using those out-of-the-box SonarWay profiles. You should refocus your quality gates to focus on the conditions that that developers will fix immediately. So what do you expect to be fixed before release? What do you expect to be fixed before code is merged? If your quality gates are covering things that you don't care about, where you don't want a developer to drop what they're doing and go address the problem immediately, you should rethink whether or not that should be part of your quality gate. And finally, you want to make sure that developers receive notifications every time your quality gate fails. So if they're working on a project, the quality gate should be something that they act on. And when it fails, they should know. Go look in SonarQube, go look at my pull requests, whatever you need to do to make sure that you know, that they know that something needs to be addressed. So thank you all for listening. We'll go ahead and take a few questions. If you have questions that came up, please feel free to add them to the Q&A box. And Kirti, let me know what we have here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brian. That was really interesting. I particularly like the first part of the project A versus project be. It's a real life example, and that was very interesting to me. So just another reminder for the audience to get your questions in on the Q&A. I see a bunch of questions that Jason and Silva are already answering, but as more questions trickle in, I think, Brian, I wanted to ask you, a question that we often get from our customers, and you've talked about quality profiles and quality gates here. What is your recommendation on teams to set up their quality profiles? Should you let each of the team members like set up their own quality profiles? What's the best practice here?
So letting teams set up their own quality profile may seem like a good way to sort of crowdsource the responsibility of setting those up. But what often happens, or what I've observed in those situations, is that every team ends up following their own set of rules. So there's really no consistent standard across your organization. And as I showed in those examples at the beginning, two projects, one can look great, and simply because they're not following many rules. So in most organizations, we recommend that you have a team, maybe folks like architects or people who are familiar with SonarQube as a platform. They should be in charge of managing those customized quality gates. Those customized quality profiles, and they should have a feedback loop. So there should be a channel where developers can let them know what they think, give feedback. You can take it from the tool, you can have other channels, but make sure you're incorporating that so they have a voice in the process as well.
All right. We have several questions here. One of the attendees asks, can SonarQube add information on pull request for Azure DevOps?
Yeah, so the pull request decoration that I showed you, that works for GitHub. It also works for GitLab, Azure DevOps, and for Bitbucket. And this includes the cloud-hosted versions as well as self-hosted versions of those DevOps platforms.
All right, very cool. You also talked about, the reporting capabilities, and we have a question here about customizing those reports. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we develop our reporting included to really reflect what we feel is important for most organizations. So in addition to that portfolio reporting, we have some security focused reporting, and then we have that project level reporting as well. If you have other reporting needs, we do have an open JSON-based web API. You can go extract any of the data that you're seeing in the SonarQube UI, and you can create whatever reports integrations you like. So if you want to put those in PDFs, spreadsheets, you can definitely do that through our API.
Cool. One of the audience asks here, does the SonarQube, I think is related to the pull request analysis, but does the SonarQube PR analysis feature work with GitHub's draft pull requests?
Yes. If you have set up a draft pull request and your DevOps platform would run a build based on that, you can absolutely run an analysis there and perform that pull request reporting.
All right. There's one question about portfolios here. You may have briefly kind of, touched upon that, but which versions of SonarQube have the portfolio section where you can, see the full view of all your projects?
So that portfolio feature is exclusive to the Enterprise Edition of our product. If you're using one of the other editions of SonarQube, or you're using Sonar Cloud, you won't have access to that. And by the way, in addition to Enterprise Edition, also our Data Center Edition, which adds some clustering capabilities to SonarQube, that also has that portfolio reporting. It's really meant to support larger enterprises. Like I mentioned, once you start analyzing hundreds of repositories with SonarQube, there's more stakeholders involved. They're the ones that are going to get the most benefit from that type of reporting.
Okay, very nice. Let's talk a little bit about quality gates. One of our audience asks a question, and what is your recommendation about configuring different quality gates for different languages? Should they be doing that? What is the best practice?
So if you take a look at the different types of conditions, especially the ones that we recommend with the Sonar Way quality gate, those are language agnostic. It reflects on each of the those categories that I showed you, those grades, regardless of the language you're analyzing. Those grades are going to be consistent across all of them. You should be able to create one or maybe a couple of quality gates and have those apply to all of your projects, regardless of the language you're analyzing.
I see. And what about delegating quality gate management? I think we have a question related to that as well.
So you can do that. There is a special role in SonarQube where those people with that role will be able to manage all of the quality gates in your system. Also, with quality profiles and quality gates, you'll have the ability to give individual users the responsibility to manage a single quality profile or quality gate. Let me pull this up real quick here. When I pull up one of these, I can go ahead and give permission to a specific user to let them have access to this. So for example, I can give myself access to be the manager of this one. So if you have some folks that maybe you want to be in charge of a particular language's quality profile, or want to be in charge of specific quality gates that map to their portion of the business, you can definitely do that with all versions of SonarQube.
All right. We have a few more minutes here, so I'm just going to take a couple of questions. There were a bunch of questions around SonarLint, questions and comments. I think one of this question asks, can SonarLint be linked to get notices from SonarQube? And can those issues be identified in SonarLint as seen on the enterprise dashboard? Can you talk a little bit about our connected mode and how that works together?
Sure. So with SonarLint, which is again an IDE plugin that's available for JetBrains-based IDEs, Eclipse-based IDEs, Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code, you can enter what we call connected mode that allows you to log into the SonarQube server. The benefits that you see from that is those notifications I mentioned earlier. When certain events happen on the SonarQube server, such as you're working on a project and that project has failed its quality gate, you'll see alerts right there in the IDE. It also syncs up the quality profile. So you'll have consistent rules being applied on the server-based scans as well as the local scans. And also, if someone goes and marks an issue as false positive or won't fix on the SonarQube server, that will be suppressed in the IDE, so you'll no longer see that particular issue. There are a few rules in our commercial editions of the product that are only run on server-based scans. These are typically security rules. They're very resource intensive. We don't want to disrupt a developer's workstation by chugging along, running really heavy duty rules there. However, you can still see those results in the IDE when you're in connected mode. But other than those, all of the other rules that we ship are run there in your IDE.
Okay. I think we have just about a minute left here. For the questions that we are not able to get to today, we will answer them on the community. And I think a bunch of you guys also asked about a copy of the recording. So we're going to send over an email with the webinar recording for everyone. So I'm going to just have one more question here, Brian, for you. This is about new code. So the question asks, apart from starting with new code, do you have any tips on driving SonarQube team adoption across the enterprise?
So one of the big things is just making SonarQube more visible. So having those notifications, having that reporting available, making sure that you're focused on standards that your developers care about. I found that, when you're focusing on just the code they're writing today, when you're not being too nitpicky and really focusing on the things that your entire business agrees is important, that tends to really help developers embrace products like SonarQube or really any static analysis tool and begin including it as part of their day-to-day routine, which is really the only way that you're going to improve code over time.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. And thanks to everyone for attending today. We will see you in the next webinar. Take care and have a great day.